I'm Mary Polchaninoff, and welcome to Sure Things. Part of the community involvement I have involves doing some community service with the Rotary Club, and my husband and I were honored to be working at a burn camp that firefighters sponsor during the summer. There I met our next guest. I'm very pleased today to welcome Joe Matthews. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and you are a retired New York firefighter.
That is correct.
Right. How long were you with the fire department?
I was with the New York City Fire Department for 22 and a half years.
22 and a half years. Wow, wow. And we had the pleasure to meet and chat a bit about your service in the fire department, because you even mentioned you were at 9/11.
Correct. Yes, I was.
Yeah,
I was
that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Part of that. And then what I wanted to know too, because we are going to talk about your service, your community service, and your book. But what inspired you to be a firefighter?
That's a good question too, because it's a lot of firemen from the time they're 5 years old know they want to be a fireman, and it's also the New York City Fire Department. It's a lot of fathers, sons, grandsons. You sometimes can go generations.
Right.
I learned about the fire department through friends I grew up with who became firemen.
Oh, so it wasn't a family thing.
It wasn't a family thing for me. No,
Yep.
I was the first person in my family that became a firefighter.
And you were just inspired to do that?
Yeah, from friends. Friends of mine, they loved the job. After college, in the book I mentioned how I had like a string of kind of unrewarding jobs, or jobs I didn't really like, and my friends who were firemen were loving the job, and they were telling me about it, how exciting it is, how it can be scary at times, but how you're helping people all the time, and so that's what kind of
and that's what inspired you for 22
Correct.
years. You said
Correct.
you worked up to a captain. That's awesome.
Correct.
Wow,
Yeah.
in New York City. So how did you get involved in community service or the charity involvement? Because you seem to have a lot of charity involvement.
Yeah, so that's another funny story. As a New York City firefighter, I met a guy named Billy Carlson, who we became pretty good friends. Our careers had crossed a number of different times, first in Brooklyn, then in Manhattan. And every once in a while I would see Billy at the gym at the fire academy. And one day he told me the story about him volunteering at this burn camp in Connecticut. So I told him, boy, that's something that I would be interested in, Billy. And when I retire and have more time, because again, I had married 2 children and just busy with life, I said, when I retire, I'd like to get involved with the camp. Yeah. So again, when I retired, I reached out to Billy. I said, Billy, I'd love to help out at the camp if that's possible. He right away introduced me to the camp director, Steve Lupinacci. One phone call, and 5 minutes later.
How long have you been with the camp?
I've been with the camp for about 10 years. We did miss 1 year due to COVID,
right? And
I missed another year or 2 due to personal reasons. But I think this year will be my 10th.
Your 10th year, and that's a camp for burn survivors.
Correct.
And it's once a summer,
once a year.
Once a year in the summer.
1 week every summer, usually the last week in July.
And that's at camp.
Deer Lake Camp now.
Deer Lake.
Prior to that, it was at an old Boy Scout camp.
Okay, Deer Lake Camp. Wow, yeah. So that's an awesome thing in itself. That community service is awesome for the needs and taking care of the people such as that. But let me talk about your World Kitchen involvement here, because how did you get involved with helping out with the World Kitchen?
So the World Central Kitchen is an organization that I raised money for when I bicycled across the country. I decided to set up a fundraising page. And again, it was one of these things that just, I fell one day and hurt my knee. And after going through all types of things, trying to figure out what was wrong with my knee, I finally went to an orthopedist. And I was shocked when he told me there was nothing he could do. There was bone on bone. There was no cartilage in there. And he recommended a knee replacement surgery. So I figured that it was my, oh my God, I forget which knee I hurt more, left or right knee. But anyway, I figured both knees had been through the same thing. Right. So they looked and they said, yeah, both knees need to be replaced. So I did something that I'm not sure if I would recommend to anybody. They say only about 10% people who have knee replacements do it, is doing it together, simultaneous bilateral knee replacement
So
surgery.
you're just going to get both knees done.
I just went in.
You're laid up. You can't walk.
That's Joe Matthews' way of doing things. I never research things. I just do it. So anyway, I had it done in I believe it was December of 2021. And I was home on my couch in this machine called the CPM machine, where my knees are rotating like this, and Russia invades Ukraine.
Wow.
And I just remember from working on 9/11 how the world all came together and people helped us. And I was just trying to think of, here I was stuck at home doing my therapy for my knee, my recovery period, which was a long, painful process. So I had nothing else to do, and I kept thinking, what must it feel like to be Ukrainian and be invaded by another country? And I remember everybody coming together for us after 9/11. So I said, well, what can I do to help these people? And this idea of biking across the country came up, which was kind of an idea I had earlier in my life through a friend of mine who biked across the country. So it just popped up in my head, you know what I'll do? I'll raise money, do a fundraising, biking across the country, and raise money for the World Central Kitchen. Initially...
Did you know about the World Central Kitchen?
No. So initially... And again, this is a Joe Matthews thing. I'm not thinking straight. I just said to my kids, listen, I'm going to bike across the country. I'll raise money, and then I'll go to Ukraine and see where the need is, and I'll give money to where the need really is. And my two children, Stephen and Kelly, who are a lot smarter than I am, said, Dad, that is crazy. Find an organization that knows where the need is and how to spend the money. Oh. So after researching, I'm going to say a handful of organizations, World Central Kitchen popped up, and I had a good friend of mine, Jeff Jaffouni, and his wife Heidi had volunteered for them. So I reached out to them, and I knew that they had set up a kitchen in Szczecin, Poland, that's on the Polish-Ukrainian border, to feed people. And Jeff and Heidi had told me only good things about the organization, so I did a little bit more research on them, and I said, now that's an organization that I'd like to raise money for.
So that's how you decided on the World Central Kitchen?
That's how I decided, right, through those friends. And then I reached out to them, and there was some formalities on, whether you can volunteer, and I told them my time frame. My original goal was to bike across the country, raise the money, and then go and volunteer at the World Central Kitchen. Sure. But as everybody knows, life doesn't always go as planned.
But you got there.
Yeah. So originally I was going to bike across the country and then volunteer. So, and I was going to bike from California to New York because the prevailing winds blow west to east. So it's easier to bike from California to New York than the opposite. Yeah. So anyway, I ship my bike out to California. I fly out there. My son Stephen bikes with me for the first 6 days of the trip. And we were in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And I wasn't fit enough. My knees hadn't healed correctly. And we were going up this climb. And I couldn't do it. So turn around with my tail between my legs. Me and Steve go back to a hotel. We go online. I said, maybe there's another easier way to bike across the country. And Route 66 pops up. So Stephen goes back to San Francisco where he lives. And I get on a bus train trip to Los Angeles, get to the Santa Monica Pier, put my tires in the Pacific Ocean again, and leave from Santa Monica Pier, again heading east to New York. I get in an accident in Las Vegas, going over my handlebars. I break my collarbone. In the interim of this, I have my fundraising page set up, and I have people that are paying me per mile.
All for the World Central Kitchen.
All for the World Central Kitchen, and people are sending me money, and I'm not. I have about, at the time of my accident, I had, I think, 428 miles underneath my belt, and I thought it was going to be roughly a 3,500 to 4,000 mile trip. So I felt like I only did 10% of the miles I originally planned on doing, and in the interim, my fundraising page had about $18,000 in it. My goal was $25,000, and it was, and so I have so I break my collarbone, and the doctor tells me, you can't bike. Right. It's going to take 6 to 8 weeks for this thing to heal, and I'd even wait 12 weeks before I get back on the bike. So I fly home with my bike with a bent wheel and broken pride. My pride probably hurt more than the shoulder hurt. And I get home, and I'm getting ready. Now I'm getting ready to still do my volunteer commitment. I made a commitment to volunteer for 2 weeks in Poland with World Central Kitchen. So I got accepted for a 2-week period. Actually, it was just 1-week period, which is another story. But I volunteered at the burn camp. I went to Poland. And in the interim, a fellow firefighter, John Ricketts, reaches out to me. And he says, Joe, if you want to do the bike trip again, I'll do it with you. So again, without thinking too much, I just said to him, okay, John, I'll
Meanwhile, you go to Poland and help
I
with
go
the
to Poland,
kitchen,
correct.
feed the hungry,
Correct.
make the food.
Work with the World Central Kitchen.
That's
I
awesome.
can't say enough good things about the organization, Jose Andreas, the people I met there that I worked with in the kitchen. Just really a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
I can't say enough good things about
That's really awesome. So then you come back, so you do your stint in Poland.
Correct. Just before the Poland trip, I
Right.
did do my volunteer work
Yeah.
at the Arthur C. Luft Burn Camp is the name of the camp where the kids go that are severely burned, traumatic burn injuries, for 1 week where they get to be like a normal kid.
Yeah.
And really, they are inspirational.
Right.
Inspirational.
That's
yeah.
good. That's awesome.
Right.
So then you meet up with John. Now
Yeah,
this,
so we
you
meet
do
up
the opposite
with John.
way, right?
We meet up with John,
Yeah.
and John wants to leave in January and bike from San Diego to Florida. And this is in the summertime. It's around July that me and John hook up. And I tell him I don't want to wait till January. I said I have a commitment to do my week at the burn camp, and then I was going to Poland for 3 weeks. So we decided to leave in September, and we're going to go from New York to Newport Beach, California, because John Ricketts wants to do things the tough way. He doesn't want the easy way. He wants to go against
And
the
the
wind.
tough way, because it's after, because it's
Because the prevailing winds blow west to east, and we're going to
Right.
go east to west. So we're
Okay.
going to go the more difficult way, leaving from New York.
From New York.
and biking to
Okay.
California.
We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we're going to continue with our story and the book with Joe Matthews. Be right back.
Smart TVs and streaming services have taken over the television industry. VSC TV is proud to announce our presence on Apple TV and Roku to make watching your favorite shows even easier. You can access this service by downloading the Cablecast ScreenWeave app. Then choose Valley Shore Community TV from the list of channels. Select VSC TV Live to watch our channel in full HD. Or pick a show from our on-demand video library. VSC TV is your local Connecticut Mid-Shore Valley digital connection.
Hi, welcome back to Sure Things. I'm here with my guest, Joe Matthews, who wrote a book for a good cause called Cycling for a Cause. And Joe, at the ripe age of 63, decided to bicycle across country. So we're just picking up where you talked about now you're going to leave with your friend John and go from New York to Newport Beach.
Correct.
Oh my
God. I volunteer with the World Central Kitchen in Poland, and I meet some other volunteers, and we actually went to Ukraine, which originally when I was going over there, I told my kids, don't worry, I'm not going to step foot in Ukraine. But we did go there for a few days. We went to a country at war. We visited Lviv, which is on the western coast of Ukraine, and I was really happy that I went there.
Yeah.
And we visited a country at war. The people there were wonderful, very nice people.
You could see the World Central Kitchen in action.
Yes.
And the good it's doing for people in that war-torn country.
When we had the kitchen in Poland, it was right on the border where people would leave Ukraine and get there, and then people that had family and friends would disperse to other countries. The poorest people would stay in a shelter there, and again, it was an eye-opening thing. It was mostly men. It was mostly women and children because the men were back in the country, defending their country.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So anyway, so we did our stint in Ukraine. I come back, and now me and John are getting ready to leave. September 18th is when we're going to take off. So I got back at the end of August, had a couple of weeks to prepare.
And this is 2020?
2022.
2022, so it just really happened. Okay, 2022.
Right. So again, originally I had a little bit of a taste for what I was in for the first two attempts, but Go ahead.
And how long did you think it was going to take you?
We thought it was going to take about 3 months. We assumed it would be
Okay.
roughly 90 days. And we left September 18th and we finished December 17th, for literally 3 months to the
3
day
months.
of 90 days with John Ricketts.
Yeah. that sounds like title number 2 of the book. But this one you did, I noticed you did this for causes, but more also other causes besides the World Kitchen.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
the kitchen.
So again, this was a funny thing. I felt like I wanted to give back to the world. I'm an extremely lucky guy. Had a wonderful career. Got 2 great kids. I'm a grandfather now. And I wanted to give back to back to the world. So World Central Kitchen was number 1 because that's who I raised money for, and I know what kind of an organization it is. But I also had to do Memorial Sloan Kettering for cancer. I had to give back to the Burn Care Foundation that funds the camp. Tunnels to Tower Foundation, another firefighter foundation. That's a wonderful foundation. Shriners Hospital, because some of the kids that are severely burned get treated at their burn care facility and then come to the camp. St. Jude's Hospital, I've been given to them for over 30 years. So I picked 6 organizations to raise money for.
To raise money for. So you set off in September with your knees recovered at 63, and you're going to spend 3 months biking across country.
I thought they were recovered. They say it takes a full year for the knees to fully recover. So I'm still at the full year point. But my knees were feeling better. They were definitely feeling better. Correct.
And so what do you do to prepare for such a feat? Because I'm going to call it a feat when you cycle across country.
So that's another interesting thing. I was like trained, once my broken clavicle healed, my broken collarbone, I got back on the bike. And even in Poland, I started biking a little bit more. I got home, me and John met a few times. We did a few rides. I was biking pretty much on a regular basis, trying to build up my endurance, Sure. But we also realized that as we went along, we would become fitter.
Absolutely, I would think. With how many miles, because I know from reading your book, I know the mileage varied, but
Correct.
while you were planning it, what was your thought on the number of miles per day you'd have to be on that bike?
So another interesting thing, John had this goal of averaging over 50 miles a day, having one day where we averaged over 15 miles per day, and reaching an altitude of over 6,000 feet. Excuse me. My only goal was to bike across the country. But we did reach all those goals. We averaged, I think, 53 miles per day. Some days were shorter, some days were longer, depending. As you get further out in the west, there are areas in the country where there's absolutely nothing between point A and point B.
Right.
Could be 70 miles.
Just flat. Yeah. There's some more. Yeah, I read that there were, because sometimes you went over 70 miles. And that,
Correct.
When you're out that way.
Correct.
Yeah. And the other thing that surprised me, and I know we talked about it a bit before on air, but that you could be on the interstates.
Yeah.
That was.
That's another interesting and scary part is the interstates.
Because you talked about the big semi trucks whizzing past you,
Correct.
and you having to hold on to those, and even the part where, which we know, firsthand on interstates, and they're not all smooth on the sides.
No.
Some of them were rough and ready.
Correct. When you get into the middle of the country, there's some parts of the country there's no paved roads.
Right. So you had gravel.
Yep.
Yeah, or the interstate.
Or the interstate. Correct.
And so the other thing I noticed in the book too, you used a lot of, and I'm surprised it was so accurate, but you did a lot with Google Maps.
Yes.
To actually look at the roads.
Correct.
Yeah.
So originally, when I was first doing a trip, I got paper maps from the Adventures in Cycling Association.
Oh, okay.
So I had paper maps on on my handlebars in a waterproof clear case. My problem was I couldn't read it without my reading glasses on. So Stephen,
you couldn't cycle and see.
No. So Stephen, my son, said, Dad, why don't you just use Google Maps and use your iPhone? So I got an iPhone mount for my bike. And you just put in point A to point B, and Google Maps tells you the way to go by bike.
That's amazing. And then I also noticed, because with the planning involved is incredible, you had to really plan where you were going to stay.
Yes.
Did you have, before you started, did you have an overall idea of the number of places you might stay and the cost? Because I'm thinking you just go and...
We really, we assumed if we did 50 miles a day, And we knew it was going to be roughly 3,500 miles to go across the country. I think that's 70 or 75 days of biking. Plus you need days off to recover.
Right.
So that's where the 90 days came into account. But we really didn't have, we never planned like more than 4 or 5 days ahead.
So you did 4 or 5 days, right.
Because of there's just so many different variables.
Right, and weather-wise, I mean, you had that big rainstorm that you went through. But weather-wise, it seemed like you were able to plan your days off, like when it snowed or something, when you had bad weather.
Correct.
You were able to kind of sit it out, which helped.
I didn't realize. I thought once we got to Memphis, where we were further south, I didn't think we'd run into cold weather. But once we got into like New Mexico, we reached 7,000 feet in elevation one day, and the temperatures were below freezing. One day we left, it was 18 degrees, and with the wind chill, probably close to 0. We really didn't have the correct clothing.
Right, for that type of weather.
Yeah, so we had a couple of tough days out there.
You did, but I was impressed how you found places, because you wrote in your book how you originally started with some type of camping equipment in case needed.
Correct.
And then you decided to get rid of the excess weight. Yeah.
Right.
So then
So when me and John left, we decided not to bring camping equipment. We were going to go hotel to hotel.
Right.
But we didn't realize once you get out wet, I should have had looked a little further about how many times there's absolutely not a gas station, a 7-Eleven, nothing for 70, 80 miles between point A and point B. So you'd have to bring the food and enough water and just be prepared for a long day on the bike.
And you were. It sounded like, especially with your food, you had that down pat. The energy food needed as you stopped for your breaks.
Lived on peanut butter and wassa bread.
Yes.
And if the hotel had like an apple or bananas, that was a bonus. That was a bonus.
And your waffles in the morning. You like your waffles in the morning.
Waffles in the morning. Correct. Do you remember that, Mary?
I do, because you talked a lot about. I mean, your book really, to me, it felt like a journal, and that I wondered about your process of when you finally get back, or you get to Newport and you're there. And you decide to come back and write the book.
Correct.
What's your process? Do you have a certain time of day you're going to write? What do you do?
So I kept the journal throughout the whole trip, and I was thinking about writing a book. And again, typical Joe Matthews. Like I've never wrote a book before. I never took an English literature class at college. English was never my strong subject. I just said I'll write a book. Well, like anything else, how do you do that? You Google how do you write a book. So that's kind of I found I decided to self-publish the book.
Right.
So this way I had control over it. The book from cover to cover is Joe Matthews. It's Joe Matthews from cover to cover. I wrote it by myself, no help, except for of course editing. I had an editor, and I had the book proofread. Because my grammar, my English, it would have been.
So it really was really all from your journal. It read like so every day when you got back to the hotel or you got to a hotel.
I would write in the journal. So then I started writing the book, and again, I had no idea how long that was going to take me. It took me much longer than I would have ever expected, and there were a number of times I was going to throw it in the garbage. I said nobody's going to buy this book or read it. But like everything else, you got to persevere. You got to be able to take rejection.
It's great though.
Yeah,
it's great. So so you still collect for your causes?
Yeah. So basically, originally I was going to, all profits were going to go to these 6 charities. Well, I came to the conclusion the book is never going to be profitable because I'd have to sell. I don't want to go into the numbers, but I have to sell a lot more copies than I'm probably going to sell.
Right.
So instead, what I did was my son gave me the idea of bumping the price up a couple of dollars.
And then you give some.
And then for every copy that's sold, $1 goes to each of the 6 foundations, and $1 goes to me.
Right. So you get that. Yeah.
Right.
So it's amazing. I think it's a great read for someone to really. And the lesson of perseverance is there for sure. So you also in your book you talk about how you went to the you climbed Kilimanjaro, you went to Mount Everest Base Camp to help others. So looking ahead, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Wow, Mary.
I mean,
Joe
you've done
Matthews,
so much.
5 years from now. One, I hope I'm still on the planet 5 years from now.
Yeah.
I'm a grandfather now. Otto's my grandson.
And you're turning 65 this weekend.
I'm going to be 65 this week.
Yeah.
So that'll be when I'm 70 years old. Geez, I hope I'm still kicking. I hope I can still help people. You know, I still plan on being involved with the burn camp. You know, I'm trying to promote the book to raise money for these charities. So I'm going to be busy with that probably for the next year.
That's going to help, yeah.
I still work as a fire safety consultant. Yeah, 5 years from now, it'll be interesting to see where Joe Matthews is. But I hope I'm still above the ground.
I'm sure.
And I hope I'm still contributing in some way to the world we live in.
What message would you leave with people, Joe?
One, don't be afraid to live your dreams. I mean, this guy gave me a line, I think when I was like 20 years old, like life's not dress rehearsal, right? You only live one life. So if you can make a difference,
right,
a positive difference in, in some way or another to somebody else, help somebody out, it comes back in so many great ways.
Yeah.
So I feel like volunteering and give it back is
That's
is
great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that's how you end the book. Do not be afraid to live your dreams.
Correct. Don't be afraid to live your dreams.
Cycling for a cause. Well, thank you, Joe. I'm so glad. And
Mary, I don't know how to thank you.
It's
been
so
a pleasure.
Glad we met, and
it's been a pleasure.
I'm humbled by all the work you do for others, which is awesome. And I hope everyone else gets that message. Please let me know if you have any feedback or questions. SureThingsCT@gmail.com. Again, the book was Cycling for a Cause with Joe Matthews. Till next time, take care.